Welcome to Unrestricted with April B. I am your host, April Bowman, and thank you for joining me for yet another episode of Unrestricted, where we invite God to move unrestricted in and through us. And as I surrender and allow God to move unrestricted through me, I pray that you are inspired to allow the Holy Spirit to move unrestricted in and through you too. Y'all, here we are for yet another episode, nearing the end of season 1 already. God is so good and He is so faithful. I am just so grateful for the honor and the privilege to be used by God, however He wants to move. As I was getting ready to take my seat for this recording, for this episode, I heard God say to mount my platform, to mount the pulpit. And I was like, wow, God, you have chosen for this to be a pulpit, for this to be a place where your word and your light and your truth goes out into all the world just from the recording of a podcast. And for that, I am grateful. I encourage you to ask God, what platform does He want you to mount? What pulpit, even if it's untraditional, is He inviting you to, so that you can be in position for God to move, for God to be glorified, and for Jesus to be lifted on high. Okay, that was just a bonus, okay? That wasn't even the topic of this episode, but I just felt led to share that with you. And as we dive into this week and this season and wrapping up the season, I pray that you are activated, that you're activated to move, not just listen, not just be a hearer, but be a doer. So this week, I received a message via a group message on Instagram. I'm in a group with a group of young ladies, and one was asking, hey, can we have a meeting and we fellowship and we talk about the Lord and what we hear God saying and what we hear Him doing? And she asked if we can host a meeting because there's so much going on in the world. There's a war going on. We are seeing bloodshed in real time. We are seeing things that are happening from what the Bible told us will happen, but it feels surreal to see it with your own eyes in an age of social media where you see the blood, you see the dead babies, you see the limbs being blown apart. Like, it is crazy, it's disheartening, and it is hard. It is a hard time. It is a difficult time. And a lot of us feel helpless. What do I do? What do I say? God, why? Why? Why would you allow this to happen? Where are you? Right? All of these big questions that are real. And if you've had those questions, I want you to know that those questions are normal, because we're human and we're always looking for answers. We're looking for answers. And that was the question that this young lady asked in the group message. Can we meet? Can we talk about what's going on? Because I don't understand it and I want to hear what God is saying even to and through you all. And what does the word say? And she's like, I want to dive into this. And my immediate response, anytime people want to meet and gather and discern what's going on and what's going on is a sign of the times, my immediate answer is like, yes, let's do it. Let's jump in. But in prayer this week, I kept hearing the Lord say, don't stop building. He told me, don't stop building and don't come off of the wall. Don't stop building and don't come off of the wall. That's the title of this week's episode, is to keep building. Don't come off of the wall. If you remember in our previous episode called Rebuild, that took me to the book of Nehemiah. It was actually in the month of August 2023. The Lord was speaking to me about rebuild the wall. He had me studying Nehemiah. I talked about Nehemiah in the Unrestricted with April B podcast episode titled Rebuild. Listen to it if you haven't, so that this episode makes more sense to you. And in that message that the young lady sent, God's instructions to me were my normal self wanted to jump in, wanted to pray, wanted to gather, wanted to intercede collectively, wanted to help make sense over something that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, well, Lord, you've put me in their life in a form of a leader, is a form of a shepherd. If the sheep are crying out, I want to be a person that can help bring some comfort and pass on what you are saying. But the Lord told me to keep building and don't come off the wall. So I waited a few days to see, before I even responded, I waited a few days before I even responded to her message. And that's not like me. That's not like me. And in this whole week, I kept hearing the Lord say, keep building. And before this week, and before the war happened, and before all of this bloodshed and these times of uncertainty, even though we've been in a time of uncertainty for so long, it feels like that's just the time and the season which our lives have been born into for this generation, because we are in the end times and we will see it. And God says, expect it. Expect it, right? But it's hard when you're in it. But this week, I kept hearing God say to keep building, and He instructed me to work while it's still day, because when night comes, no man can work. And I was like, okay, well, I want to respond. And the Lord didn't allow me to respond right away, because I would have been responding out of emotion. I would have been responding out of my flesh, but I wanted to see what the Lord was saying. And I responded just the other day, a few days later, and said, the Lord instructed me to keep building. And I had to recognize that even a conversation, even an impromptu meeting, was me coming off the wall and coming lower and doing something that God did not instruct me to do. So we're going to dive into Nehemiah, because I want to show you real time how important it is, even when there's a godly call. When there's a godly call, her question was innocent. Her question was sincere. It's a question that I even have myself. It's a question that we all have. And where I would have responded differently in the past, God let me know that this time is sensitive. I have to protect the specific assignment that God has given me to keep building and to not come off the wall. And I share that with you as an encouragement for what God is saying, not just to me, but to you. Keep building and don't come off of the wall. What you are building is time sensitive. What He has instructed you to do, like I was talking about that platform, that pulpit, you going into all the world, what God has instructed you to do in your family, on your job, what He has instructed you to do wherever He has you, keep building, because the Lord has need of you. The Lord has need of you. It's been said many times. Many prophets have said, don't get wrapped up in what you see. They've been saying it for months and for a year, and God kept warning me to not get distracted by what I see. And when the war in Israel started to happen, and I'm trying to understand what is God saying, and both sides, there's death and there's innocent blood being shed, and I'm like, Lord, I don't understand. And where are you in this, and what are you saying? God reminded me that He already warned me to not get distracted by what I see, because what He said, it shall come to pass. So as the Lord is telling me to rebuild the walls, He's telling you to rebuild, because there's something and there's someone and there's something you're connected to in which the walls have been torn down, and that the place, the city, it is vulnerable to attack, is vulnerable to be taken away, is vulnerable to whatever the enemy wants to send its way, because the walls have been torn down. Go back and listen to Rebuild, because I talked about the walls. The walls of the city in the ancient days were important. They were important. And in the book of Nehemiah, he received word that the walls of Jerusalem were torn down. They were burnt down. The walls were crumbled. The people didn't have any protection. They didn't have protection. And when there's no walls, There's nothing covering a people. Anything can happen. Death and destruction can happen. Rape, all these things can happen. And we are seeing that in real time of cities being burnt down, and there's bombings, and there's destruction in real time. I'm like, Lord, you have me reading what's happening. You have me reading back then what happened, and it's showing me what's happening now. And you're trying to show me the connection between the past and the now and the future. And I'm trying to comprehend. And it's not even for me to comprehend, it's for me to seek the Lord and ask him, what is he saying and what is he telling me to do? Because there's a work for me to do. There's a work for you to do. And God is God alone. He is in control. He is sovereign, and he is still on the throne. In the midst of whatever's happening, even with walls being torn down, and we see it real time of walls being torn down and there being attack and destruction, God is still on the throne, and he still has a plan, and his plan shall come to pass in Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. And in the book of Nehemiah, Nehemiah received word that those walls of Jerusalem were torn down. The walls of the city were torn down. Nehemiah, he wept. He wept. And he prayed and he fasted. And then he asked the king if he could go to rebuild the wall. So he went out of his position to go to his homeland, his place of residence. Nehemiah went back to his home in Israel to help to rebuild the walls. And in that rebuilding, Nehemiah faced opposition. When you are on assignment for the Lord, you will face opposition. Whatever it is that grieves your heart, that you're like, I don't like the way this feels, this shouldn't be, and you have that holy conviction, you have that burden that keeps you up at night, and so you can't shake it, and it won't allow you to sleep, and you're mourning over it, and you're grieved over it, and other people are just moving on like nothing ever happened. That is something that God is inviting you to do. He's inviting you to build the wall. He is inviting you to be a solution in the earth for that natural problem. And Nehemiah said, send me. He asked the king to send him so that he could be a solution, and he can rebuild the walls and fortify the walls and bring back peace to his people. God wants to fortify the walls, and he wants to rebuild the walls, and he wants to bring back peace to his people. And he does it through a person. Over and over again, we see it in the word. Over and over again, God sends a person that's willing to go. Are you willing to go? You see what's happening in your family. You see what's happening in the city. You see what's happening in the world. Will you be willing to go and rebuild those walls? And we talked about that in the rebuild episode, so I'm not going to keep rehashing the details. But if you keep going in that story, when Nehemiah is there, he's working to rebuild the walls. He gathers the people. He's delegating. People are doing their part. People are building here, and people are building this part of the wall, and everyone's working to rebuild the wall. So Nehemiah was managing the rebuilding project for the whole city. And he brought the people together, and they were working in harmony, and they were working to rebuild the wall. And how many of you know, when you are working head down, doing the work of the Lord, the enemy will always send someone to try to throw you off course? Always. Expect it. Don't be surprised by it. Expect it. And already premeditate how you're going to respond. As Nehemiah is working, and this is where we're going to get into our text in Nehemiah chapter 6, as he is working to rebuild the wall, his haters who were watching him, who didn't like what he was doing, because he liked the people being vulnerable. They liked the people being without protection. They liked the people not being able to even worship their God in peace. These leaders in this town came up to Nehemiah, and they were watching, talking about, oh, that little wall he's building, even a fox can climb up that wall. Like, they're clowning. Like, anything can get up that wall. What they're doing is not working. And then they start lying on them because they saw the rebuilding of the wall was working. Oh my gosh, that wall is almost built. Oh, they know what they're doing. Oh, they're going to finish this project, right? Sometimes people start to see, oh, that business idea you had, oh, that little business, they talk about you. They talk down to it. Oh, that little thing you're working on or whatever you believe in God. Oh, that little change. Oh, you think you different. You think you somebody. People would always diminish what God has said to you until they see, wait, oh, it is working. You are making progress. I do see those walls. Those walls are standing on their own. Those walls, I got to look up to those walls. Oh, okay. You did hear from the Lord, and the Lord is on your side. He has given you favor, and he has brought you unity, and you have brought a people together, and you are doing the work of the Lord. And when the haters saw that the wall was being rebuilt, they came and sent a distraction. They came and sent a distraction. And if you can, join me in Nehemiah chapter 6. Nehemiah chapter 6. And we'll just kind of talk about what those haters were doing to try to get Nehemiah from building. Chapter 6, verse 1. Now it happened when Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem, and Arab, and the rest of our enemies. These were enemies, not just enemies of Jerusalem. They were enemies of the Lord. They were enemies of the Lord. When the rest of our enemies have heard that I rebuilt the wall and that there were no breaks left in it. One version says there are no gaps left in the wall. Where are the gaps in the wall that you're connected to? Where are the gaps? Where are the holes in the wall of your home, of your community, of your city? Where are the gaps? Nehemiah went and he said, I rebuilt this. I closed them gaps. I closed those holes. And he said, when these enemies heard that I rebuilt the wall and there were no breaks left in it, though at that time I had not hung the doors. He said, I ain't doing the little things yet. We get into that. I have not hung the doors in the gates. That Sanballat and Geshem sent to me saying, the enemies came saying, yo, Nehemiah, come let us meet together among the villages. They said, come meet with us in Ono. But Nehemiah knew that they sought to do him harm. Nehemiah peeped their game. They said, come meet with us. Come talk to us. Let's meet at Ono. Let's meet at this one spot. And Nehemiah already knew, you don't mean me no good. And then verse 3. So Nehemiah is saying, so I sent messengers, Nehemiah. So Nehemiah sent messengers to them saying, this is the part we're focusing on. Nehemiah sent messengers to them saying, I am doing a great work so that I cannot come down. Nehemiah said, y'all, I'm busy. I am doing a great work. I am doing the work of the Lord. I can't come down to where you are. I'm not interested. I'm not going. And go ahead, be about your business while I'm about my Father's business. Move on. That's my version. Right? So he said, I'm doing a great work, so I can't come down. And then Nehemiah said, why should the work cease? Why should the work I'm doing stop? Why should the work cease while I leave it and go down to you? Down to you? Like you're on my level. Why am I going down to you? Why am I coming off of this high place to come down to you and to respond to you? Because I'm doing a great work. So that was a hard no. Nehemiah's like, no, and thank you, and no. Right? And so this is what he's saying to them. But the enemies sent this message 4 times. 4 times. They kept trying to get Nehemiah to come off the wall. They kept trying to meet with him. They kept trying to distract him because they didn't want the work to be finished. And they actually sought to kill Nehemiah. Then they sent a false prophet, said, let's meet in the temple. Nehemiah's like, we need to meet in that temple. They sent a false prophet to Nehemiah and said, let's meet in the temple because these people are trying to kill you, but you'll be safe in the temple. Nehemiah was like, I don't need to meet in that temple. I'm good. And he discerned that that was a lie. It was a false prophet who was hired by his enemies to try to set him up to take him out. These people were desperate to get Nehemiah out of position. There are some people who are desperate to get you out of position, to come down to where they are, because they don't want you finishing what the Lord has said to do. And the thing is, y'all, it's not about the people who are coming to you to distract you. They are sent by the enemy, Satan. They are sent by the enemy of the Lord. It's not even about our enemies. It's the enemies of the Lord. It is the enemy that wants to try to cease the work from being finished. He wants to stop the work from being done because the Lord has a great work for you to do and for me to do, and we can't come off the wall to address the little things that the enemy is sending our way as distractions in the form of something good, in the form of something that maybe we would have done before, in the form of a good question, in the form of, okay, that makes sense. There's curiosity, there's a need, in the form of there's so much going on in the world. Let's come together. But the Lord told me, don't come off the wall, April. Don't come off the wall, April. And the Lord is saying that to you. Insert your name and say it out of your own mouth. Say your name. Don't come off the wall. Don't come off the wall. Keep building. Keep building, April. Enter your name. Keep building. Keep building, and don't come off of the wall. Because you coming off the wall of what God has instructed you leaves the people and the city vulnerable to attack. And there is a great work that the Lord has for you to do, and it is time sensitive. So don't be moved by what you see going on in the world. Do not be moved by what you see to the left or to the right. You have to stay facing the Lord. You have to keep your face towards the Lord, and you have to hear his voice, and you have to be aware of distractions, be aware of false prophets, be aware of whatever the enemy is trying to send your way to get you down, to come off that wall and to stop building. What has the Lord told you to build? Build it. Build it, and don't stop until it's built. Don't stop until it's built. Don't stop until it is built, and figure out who do you need to come work in unison with you to help you build this wall. See, the Lord gave me a specific assignment in July of what he was telling me to build. I've been building. July 1st makes 7 years of me building. 7 years of full-time ministry and full-time entrepreneurship. 7 years of building as I have heard the Lord instructed me to build Bold Believers United Ministries, to build. But then he gave me another assignment, which was an old assignment. He said, go back to it. Go back to it because it's time sensitive. And I was at a church, and there was a young man at the altar, and I wasn't even preaching or speaking that day. But there was a young man at the altar, and I was praying for him, and I discerned that he was battling the spirit of suicide. He wanted to take his life. God revealed it to me, and I was praying and I was interceding on his behalf. And I was saying that the Lord was with him, that the enemy should not come in and snatch his life, that he had no power or authority over that young man. No power, no authority. No power, no authority. And that with long life, God shall satisfy him. And I was speaking the word over him, and I was praying, and I was weeping as if I knew him, and I didn't know him. And I got home that night, and the Lord wouldn't even let me sleep, woke me up in the middle of the night and said, get back on your post, April. They're dying. Our young people are dying. They're dying by suicide. They're dying. They're dying, and no one's even noticing. They're dying. Get back on your post and do something. And it was that night. He's already told me to do it. He already gave me the instruction, but I was just waiting for when I wanted to do it. when he told me to do our Christian youth conference again, our Transform Christian Youth Conference. He told me to do Transform Youth. And that night, he told me, clear as day, our kids are dying. Get back on your post and do something. And he told me to host that conference again. And I was like, okay, Lord, I'll do it in the fall. And all of these things happened in my life. Craziness, chaos, all happened. And I was like, well, maybe I could do it in the spring. Maybe I could do it in the spring. And then the Lord sent one of my mentees, and she asked me, Miss April, when are you having the Transform Youth Conference again? I haven't hosted that conference since 2018. I said, what made you ask me that? And this is 2023. And she's like, it was just on my heart. I said, okay, Lord, I hear you. He said, pick it up again. And it's time sensitive. And although my delayed obedience, which was my disobedience, caused me to have to do this conference in a shorter period of time, he said, it shall happen before this year is out. And we're getting ready to host the conference in November, but it's me being on the wall. When I'm hosting something, it's not because it's my good idea. It is God instructed, because there is a soul that he wants to save and to snatch out of the hand of the enemy. And that is what I am building. And I just have weeks to build it. So something as simple as having an impromptu meeting about the war going on, it makes sense. I would have done it in the past, but I am on assignment. God has given me a specific assignment to build. He has given me specific things to build. He has given me strategy. He has given me a clear blueprint, and it is time sensitive, and people are dying. They're dying right in our families. They are dying right in our churches. They are dying right in our neighborhoods. And we're worried about what's going on elsewhere, where people right in front of us are dying. And the Lord said he needs you to be on your post and to do something, because he has need of thee. So Nehemiah, build, rebuild the wall. Nehemiah, keep building, even when people call you away. Keep building when people say, hey, can we meet? Can we go to coffee? Keep building. Finish the book. Finish the script. Launch the business. Start the ministry. Start the prayer group. Do the Bible study. Do what the Lord has called you to do. Homeschool your children. If the Lord has been saying that, whatever he has been speaking to you, you have to get on the wall, and don't come off of the wall responding to what's happening, because it's a distraction. And what's happening out there, you have no control of. What's happening out there, you have no control of. But what's happening within your borders, what's happening within your home, what's happening within the lives of those connected to you, you have dominion over. And the Lord has chosen you. He has chosen you, and he has sent you there. He has connected you for you to rebuild that wall. Rebuild it. Rebuild it, and don't come down, because the enemy is sending haters to not just get you out of position. And all haters are not, oh, they hate you. Not all haters are, and not everyone who comes to ask you a question or try to get you to distract you, not all people that try to come or are sent as a distraction are even recognizable as a distraction, because sometimes it's with a good thing. Sometimes it's with people you love. Sometimes it's with a small request, but you have to stay on the wall and recognize what is mine to do in this moment and in this season. Rebuild the wall, keep building, and don't come down until that wall is built, until the city is safe again, until your home and your family are safe again, until whatever God has told you to do is complete. Don't look to the left or to the right. Keep building, and don't come down unless the Lord says that it's time. Finish the work and do it while it's day, because when night comes, no man can work. Do the work of the Lord, and it's only what we do for the Lord that will last. So as he told me, keep building and don't come down. I encourage you to do the same. Keep building and don't come down, and seek the Lord while he still may be found. I pray that this episode has given you some encouragement, but also some correction to get on the wall that God has called you to, and for you to keep building and to not come down and not to be easily distracted by what's going on around you. We are to pray. We are to intercede. We are to care. We are to mourn. We are to grieve with those who grieve. Seek the Lord and ask, what is he asking you to do? And do that until the Lord says it's finished, and for you to do something else. Do that with all your heart. Do that with all your might and all of your strength, and see what the Lord does in and through you, to save a people, to save a nation, because of your obedience and your diligent focus and your yes. Share this episode with someone that could be blessed and be reminded to keep building and don't come down. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, April_M_Bowman. Follow me on Instagram, the same handle. And join us for our next episode of Unrestricted with April B. And I am praying for you, and that you stay on the wall and you keep building and allow God to move. God bless you.